CERN is an acronym that translates to European Council for Nuclear Research, but has since moved on to studying particle physics. And even though they invented the internet in 1989, they are most famous for their 666 logo, a video of a woman being ritually sacrificed on CERN grounds at the altar of Shiva, the Hindu god of destruction, and for potentially destroying the universe. Multiple lawsuits have been filed to stop CERN's particle collider, in fear that it could destroy the Earth, which revealed to the public that CERN is a sovereign entity outside the jurisdiction of the courts, so they can do whatever they want. What is it that they're doing? It has to do with high-velocity counter-rotational spin, which was first documented in Nazi Germany's most secret program, Die Glock, the bell. According to surviving documents, the bell was somehow affecting time and space. The most distinctive aspect of the bell was high-velocity counter-rotational spin, also known as torsion physics. Many are concerned that CERN is attempting to open a portal into another dimension that will allow demonic entities to enter ours. This was blatantly portrayed 6 years ago in a pagan ritual to celebrate the opening of the Gotthard Tunnel, just east of CERN. The dimension they would be attempting to open is already somewhat accessible. Do you hear voices in your head? If you do, then you likely know it's best to keep that to yourself, because a doctor will tell you that you are a schizophrenic. Modern psychiatry calls these voices auditory hallucinations. And even though a whopping 1% of the world's population suffers from schizophrenia, there isn't much research. But after 30 years of working closely with the criminally insane, Jerry Marzinski has noticed that the voices talking to these schizophrenics are all saying the same things. There is a distinct, predictable pattern. The voices are exclusively generating negative emotion, leaving the patient physically and emotionally drained. The voices are always pulling a person away from God or anything positive. The voices are always a call to action, instructing the person to either hurt themselves or hurt someone else, which is probably why the voices always rebel against the drugs that are prescribed for schizophrenia. These drugs make a person comatose, and the voices want you to do things. Marzinski believes that schizophrenics are being attacked by non-physical entities that he calls energy parasites because they feed off of negative energy. And in practically every case, the victim has experienced severe trauma, usually, which explains why the voices tell people to traumatize others. These demons want more victims. According to the ancient Gnostics, who referred to these entities as archons, they are destructive, sadistic beings who control the earth via the thoughts of humans. Voices in the head. This explains the rampant we are seeing today, and the incestuous of royal bloodlines. These energy parasites need traumatized people to feed upon. Perhaps some of the thoughts in our own mind are not our own. Most schizophrenics claim that this is the case, but are told by doctors that they are crazy. Doctors who only give them lobotomies, electroshock, and drugs. And Marzinski has only seen schizophrenics recover once they start seeing these voices as an external entity. They then realize that they can actually resist them, and the voices go away. And so, while CERN is a great mystery and a concern, the demons from another dimension may already be here, in our thoughts. So it's a good thing we all have free will.
Well, that's what psychiatry says. That's what the psychiatric mafia said. And twice I've been pulled up on the carpet for asking schizophrenics what their voices were telling them. And when I got to the state hospital, I worked at Central State Hospital back in the 70s, which is the biggest psychiatric institution on the planet. And one of the first things I noticed was nobody was curious about what these voices were telling these people. But it was clear that whatever these voices were, they were driving their behavior. They were telling them to do crazy things. They were telling them to hurt people. They were telling them to hurt themselves. And nothing in school prepared me for this. In school they said, oh yeah, they're hallucinations. That's what, and I was thinking, okay, if they're hallucinations, they're like word salad. You're not going to be able to make anything out of them. Until I saw patients walking around, arguing with them and carrying on conversations with them. So these were full-length conversations. They were, they weren't piecemeal. They weren't scattered all over the place. It was like listening to somebody talk to somebody else on the telephone, where you can hear one half of the conversations. What I found out was that the voices weren't hallucinations. That they ran specific patterns, and they ran these same patterns in all institutions, several of them: emergency rooms, mental health centers, psych hospitals, private psych hospitals, and to get to those. I have a bunch of stuff here, but I know you want to get to and on there. I found out that they were consistently negative. They weren't random. They were always negative. They were always telling the person rotten things about themselves and everybody else. They were telling them to hurt other people. They were telling them to do bad things. They were telling them to themselves. So this was a constant trait. They were consistently negative. They never said anything positive, and if they did, it was only to trip the guy up and get him to do something bad later. They would tell patients where drugs were. So if they ran out of drugs, especially with meth, the voices would tell them, you be at this place at this time, and somebody will come with the meth. And that happened. I heard that from over and over again from several different people. They were anti-religious, was one of the first things I saw at the state hospital, is that when the patients started reading the Bible or going to church, the voices acted up. They went nuts.
That's what really triggered, that's when my occurrences started to amplify, when I started to read kind of the Bible on my own for the first time. But I'll get more into that later on in the show.
Yeah, chime in anywhere along in here. So that was strange. What kind of hallucination would be anti-religious? What kind of hallucination would act up every time the guy walked into a church or every time he tried to read the Bible? That's odd. And with the negativity, what holds them on such a negative pattern? I mean, they're not random. They're held onto this pattern. They're not neutral. They're not, they're not positive. They're not, they're consistently negative.
They're trying to cause destruction of their target or host, or to incite as much negative energy as possible. So, we all get negative thoughts sometimes, but what these, I'll call them entities, do is that they amplify them in your system. They're like prodding you to get you to get more and more reactive, to kind of diminish yourself, to destroy yourself.
Yeah, they want you upset, because what they do is they feed off of that negative emotional energy that they generate. And I've had scores of schizophrenics tell me that after the voices hit, they're completely energetically drained. They have no energy left. Some of them couldn't even get out of bed.
Yeah, you can't get out of bed. I mean, you're wiped out for hours afterwards. You don't even want to move.
I don't know how they do that, but they do it, and it's consistent. They feed off of that negative emotional energy that they generate in their victim.
Is it always voices, or is it some type? I mean, can anyone see these things?
Well, I'll get into that later on the show.
Oh, good. Okay.
The answer to that is yes.
I have.
And they look different, and I've felt them. I mean, I can't see them, I can't hear them, but I can feel them. When they're around, it's like this icky electrical feeling, that cold electrical feeling. There's no other feeling like it.
What Jerry had mentioned about like the conversation, they aren't random words, random phrases that his patients were saying. They were full-blown conversations. And Jerry mentioned it's almost like somebody talking on a cell phone. You're only hearing the target's conversation. You're not hearing what the entities are saying. And hallucinations wouldn't really do that if they were random. They'd be like a smorgasbord of words or things like that. It would cause full-blown conversations because the patients were actually having conversations with these entities.
Well, they would also physically torment patients too, where they would give them headaches or body aches or stomach aches or make them nauseous. If they tried to talk about them, they would warn patients not to talk about them. They warn patients not to tell psychiatry about them because they didn't like those medicines. The voices want to keep their victims stirred up all the time, so generate that negative emotional energy. And these psychiatric drugs are major tranquilizers. They're toxic, major tranquilizers, but they're major tranquilizers, and they calm them down. So the voices don't like psychiatrists, and they don't like these medicines.